speakers today. So first off, we will have Keith Kratochvil from Principal Financial Group. He's an enterprise architect. Following him will be Troy Trudell, Vice President of Alliances at Acumatica. For the agenda today, we will be running through a multitude of topics focused around building an employee experience strategy, addressing a variety of different types of employees, such as remote and deskless workers, integrating your tech stack onto a centralized platform, creating personalized role-based experiences, helping getting organizational buy-in, and we'll talk a little bit about best practices and lessons learned. Following with that, as I previously mentioned, we will be diving into Q&A. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our main speaker. Keith, you may begin.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Thanks and welcome. Thanks for joining. Just a heads up for some of you, if you happen to have attended Digital Workplace Experience, the conference last summer in Chicago, I used most of these slides with Dave Maffey in a presentation there, so it'll be duplicative. I'm guessing there's not a lot of overlap, but I want to give you a heads up on that. I'm going to be going through a few different things today, and I think ultimately a lot of it's about, what are we trying to do and why when we talk about the digital workplace? And I think it's a magical question, and depending on who you're talking to and who's asking that question, sometimes the tone of their voice changes dramatically in terms of exactly how they say that. But I think, I believe we're still early in this market of trying to figure out the digital workplace. But I think we now have there's a consensus growing that there's something there. There's things that we can do. There's things that we're going to have to try and experiment with to do it. So our mission statement around the digital workplace, I have up here on the screen now. I think it's important as one looks at that mission statement to kind of think about it in terms of definition of digital workplace. And I think there's a number of definitions out there in the space. Some have more of a technology slant, others are more people culture, work processes sort of slant. A common one that I've seen is talking about it from more of a technology slant is the collection of tools and technology that we use makes up our digital workplace. So focusing a little bit more there. And I think for me too, the definition that you'll tend to see in what I'm sharing today is that definition for digital workplace is pretty wide. It includes things like conference room technology and how you're enabling people to work in those spaces, which ties greatly into the remote worker sort of stuff that Michael talked about. How you're just simply doing the basic abilities of people to communicate where you're at in the OS and office productivity suite spaces. Obviously in intranet, which is what I'm going to be talking a little bit more about today. And ultimately, I think, too, around a lot of it is the employee experience platforms that term's been coined the last couple of years by the marketplace. And obviously, folks like Acumatica are participating in big players in that space. But it's really just been defined the last couple of years. As I look at the mission statement, I tend to focus more on, what's the goal outcome? What are we trying to do? And we're really focused on trying to connect people to information and ideas and allowing that to happen from a global perspective, and ultimately to develop solutions. Most solutions in many cases are for customers or they're for our internal workforce, et cetera. But ultimately it's about trying to connect people and information.
Yeah, and this is Troy. I would echo that's very similar to what we see from the other customers and organizations that we work with as well, and how they do it. Might be a little bit different, but that is really one of the stated goals across all the projects that we work on. So it's great to see that here, and it's great that Keith's going to take you through how they've done it. So just wanted to interject there that it is something we see pretty broadly as well.
Yep, appreciate that, Troy. So how we work has been changing, right? And I think if you're old enough like me and been around the technology landscape for 25, 30 years, this has been something gradual, but it's the interesting part is it's really accelerated, right? And it really started to accelerate as we saw mobile break out in the 10 plus years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But just to highlight a few things on this slide in terms of what, as you work from the top to the bottom, this is really where we're headed. And our maturity across these is varies. Working out loud is something that I often use, and it's just really trying to get people to start to share information. And you can talk about that in terms of knowledge management would be the classic discipline, right? You need to develop our knowledge management. We've been similar there. Some of that has to do with our company. We're a large financial services company with different products across the globe. Some of the natural nature of our businesses causes us to live in silos, and so it's hard to break out of those silos. I think we do it well in pockets within those silos, and we have a culture. Again, we're 130-year-old company, so we still rely heavily on a highly tenured workforce that is a culture of people who know people. And trying to shift that to more digital is certainly a big challenge, and that's been a challenge for us. Every once in a while, we get some nice pushes. Like right now, we got a lot of boomers who are going to be retiring here soon, and with that, it's a lot of knowledge. And so, did we capture that knowledge, et cetera? Shared workspaces, that's been if you follow the physical landscape, that's been a huge shift over the last few years. We've been big in that too. We've moved about an 8,500 employee campus in Des Moines, Iowa, here in the U.S. to where about 75% of the folks in that environment now are deskless, myself included. So I've not had a desk for about 5 years now. For me as an enterprise architect and for what I do as a driving stuff like this, it's perfect because I work with the people I need to work with on a daily basis. We've shifted very heavily to more flexible hours. That's a huge thing that is, if you look at Principal and you look at if you're interested in working for Principal, that's a huge thing that we stress there, and we've won many awards for how flexible and how we've changed that. Working remotely, again, big thing, and we really included that as we remade our physical space, we remade our digital conferencing space. So if you look at I pulled a couple of stats over the last 12 years or the last 12 months, we've done 1.5 million Skype hours, and a lot of that's across about 450 Skype enabled rooms that are shifting to Teams. It's Microsoft as we continue to make the shift there. And the goal there is you walk into a room, push one button, and you're connected into a Skype or Teams meeting that allows people from anywhere in the globe to participate in. And from a measuring productivity, we're also on the last point there, we're shifting we've shifted most of our knowledge workers to a flexible time off. So we don't have signed amount of vacation days. We don't do that. It's about deliver what you need to deliver, take the time you need to take to live your life, and we'll work that out. So and it's part of that how we share information is changing too. I kind of mentioned that earlier, trying to shift to where everyone contributes content, aka the citizen publishing, which is certainly a big thing that fits where Kumana and others are trying to go. There's challenges there too, and I think the challenges aren't tooling. The challenges are people and culture. As you look at a lot of things, what I would say, someone somewhere probably feels ownership for something, and when someone publishes something that maybe treads into their space, how to do that. And in the past, that was all done behind the screen or behind the curtain. And now you're trying to share information and have those discussions more openly. And the other big thing we've learned is content owners of the past aren't necessarily the greatest of the future in some cases, or at least they need a decent amount of retraining. Just because they don't look at most content owners that publish content, I think in enterprises, don't think about it from the user perspective. And when we're trying to build a user-centric workspace, those content owners think about it and how they organize that content. And I've almost never found that to match how a user would expect. So doing some good UX work, getting some UX discipline people to really help is a huge thing that's been beneficial to us in that space. Shifting to just an open comments, as we rolled out our intranet over the last 18 months, I think every executive group I've met with in every country that we do business has had the same concern over sort of the question I've got is, you mean anyone can comment at any time and no one's filtering that? And the answer is yes. We believe it'll work itself out. And to be quite honest, we've not had a single. We have what we expect in our terms of service, and not a single person has gotten bounced out of here for doing something stupid there. So the culture adapts. Sometimes the stakeholders are the hardest ones to realize that things need to adapt. I think it's also harder to know what's accurate as we continue to open search, and I think enterprise search in that space is will continue to be a big challenge. And it's mostly because search is different in companies. If I search for travel policies on Google, I find all kinds of examples, which is probably what I was looking for. I search for a travel policy in an enterprise, I expect one answer. There is only one travel policy, so I can't find the version that might get published 6 months from now. I need to find the version. So I think as we continue to open that information, there are pitfalls there too. So, and I think this is common that we're all working through these journeys and we're just in different spots.
Yeah, and I think the common theme in those last two slides is really it's things are changing because people want to work more like they live. If you look across all these themes, these are all things that we have come to expect from our personal lives, our personal interactions, being more fluid there, having more open information sharing. That's the way the world has worked in the last decade or so in our personal lives, and we're seeing that more and more need to happen in the workplace for a number of things. One, because you can't change it; it's happening, and two, because there's a lot of value in embracing, people being able to work the way they want to, more open workspaces, more open communication, and those things are just things that we have to all be aware of, and things that add a lot of value to the workplace that was never there before. So it's exciting to see that the principals engaging in these things, and that Keith and their team really are kind of marching forward with this.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said there, Troy. It is trying to adapt that, and I think from a business standpoint, I think that at the end of the day, one of the values is how do we leverage that? How do we leverage all the knowledge that the people walk into to work every day, and how they solve problems in their personal lives, and how can we leverage that to solve business problems? Because at the end of the day, it's a sociology problem that applies in many different places. Sometimes I often think the biggest gap we've had in a team trying to deliver on digital workplace stuff is we actually need, the sociology discipline in that engagement, because it is about people. Speaking of people, I think, who are we trying to connect and into this thing? And obviously employees, right? That's a core piece of it. But as we continue, pick your term, whether it's liquid workforce, gig workers, et cetera, we're shifting to increasingly fewer employees. And I don't think I've been on a project or an effort in the last probably 7 to 10 years that was all employees. We have either contracts, external partners. As we rolled out our intranet, we had partners like Akumina. We had a system integrator that we've utilized heavily. We have other vendors in the financial services. We have advisors. We need to get all of them in here to some extent. So I think that audience, and sometimes one of the biggest challenges is just identities and how to manage audience. And I think it's going to keep being a challenge. Some of the gaps from an employee view. So as we started, as we went through, this sort of reinforces some of the stuff you saw earlier. As we embarked, we did spend a lot of time talking to users. We were coming off an intranet at the time, from just that core part that really been around. As we said, it was pre-iPhone, so you can imagine how awful it was from a user experience standpoint. So we really tried to start to get a feel and to where we'd start, and we're really at the 1.0 version. Hopefully in 2020 we'll see 2.0 and continue to evolve much more incrementally over the next couple of years. But what are some of the big challenges? We look at knowledge management. I mentioned that earlier, but it's simply not easy to drive the shift. Integration of tools, and so I think there's a lot of stuff starting to come out in the marketplace or research talking about what's the cost of context switching as one goes through the day, and how do you look at that, and from a productivity standpoint, and where do you target? And I think it comes back to doing, journey mapping and looking at the journeys your employees are on, figuring out what that is. I think the challenge remains to figure out how to monetize that cost to say where you're going to do it. Some people will talk about we're going to get down, the goal, if that's true, you'd want to get down to one, user experience. And the reality is, I think in a large enterprise, I don't think that's feasible. It won't be cost effective to get to one, but that doesn't mean you stay at 50, right? And so it's finding the right business cases to go across the right things to pull things together. I think additionally, a big part of this is employees want a current tailored experience, and Michael mentioned that in the opening. One of the things that we've done, what we heard is people wanted to know how to do have an intranet that would focus the information towards them and what they were after. We've done a lot there to do that, and frankly, as we look at our analytics, that's the most popular thing that we see people do when we see them doing we have the notion of my bookmarks and my applications, and you can organize that and have it one place. And again, it's probably version 0.5 in that case. It was really an experiment where we started, but I think that's been a really key piece as well. In some cases, also, it's not a one size fits all for some of these cases either. And we build a lot of things in terms of the classic example I always use is I need to be able to filter based on we have a lot of events, we have a lot of things going on, and people want to share those events. But if I'm in Santiago, Chile, I sure don't want to hear about a bake sale in Des Moines, or an event in Des Moines that I can't attend. So building the subscription model to do that was a key focus for us.
Yeah, and I would say that's huge across a lot of our customer base. A lot of the challenge that you get with bringing more content in is that then if you don't give people the ability to subscribe or filter or focus, it can become noise, and then nothing becomes important at that point. So you really do need that ability to have kind of a tiered system of communication of these are global things that everybody should see because they're important to the business, and we're gonna push those out. But then there are other things that either should automatically be filtered for me, or I should have the ability to opt in and out of as an employee. So I'm reducing that noise to a point where it's now critical communications for me, whether it's a global audience or whether it's tailored to my location or my business unit or projects that I'm working on. That's a big part of all the projects we work on is setting that up properly. And our tool can help certainly with delivering the content that way, but you do need to set it up with the right information architecture. Frankly, using a lot of the same techniques that we would use when we're building, customer experience based solutions, where you want to target and tailor content based on who somebody is and what they do. So that's something we see all the time too as well, Keith.
Yeah, it's a great point, Troy. I would say I often have conversations with people where CX and EX are the same thing. And what I've always, the way I look at it, which could be unique, is that they're absolutely the same disciplines, right? You use the same tools, journey mapping, constantly listening to feedback, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I think you're optimizing for different things within a UX or CX world. In the UX user experience world or in the employee experience world, you're looking for I think it's more about productivity. In the case of customer experience, it may be about being efficient. Obviously, you want to be as efficient as possible, but there's a few other components that are big there. So that's a great point, Troy. And talking a little bit about how EX impacts CX. We've used this in a few places, right? And it's fairly straightforward. But we're after if we're delivering a great employee experience, it's the classic HR model in terms of saying leads to better engaged employees. More engaged, more happier employees are going to deliver greater customer experience, which customer service, which leads to loyal customers, strong financial results, et cetera. I think obviously too, if you can lower your employee turnover from a global aspect, that improves your financial results. Having employees that see loyal customers that really are working there, that contributes to engagement. And ultimately, I think the toughest challenge is probably as we see those strong financial results, realizing that not only do we need to be investing in CX, we've really investing in EX will win out for some of our CX goals, and that's been a challenging thing to sell. I think we're still on a journey for that. We as an enterprise as a whole, that's still a bit of a challenge. We have a lot of things focused on CX right now, not as much as I'd like to see focused on EX. And again, I don't know if we're all that different there, but that's one of the challenges. Just a little bit, Troy, did you have something there you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I agree completely with what you just went over, and it's something we're seeing more and more in that they are tied together. There's actually been a lot of great research by MIT and Gartner and others that point to this as well, that when you invest in both, you get returns on both sides. And again, the returns are different, right? And you talked in terms of productivity, and for CX, it's more maybe revenue growth and things like that. But the techniques can be similar to achieve those outcomes. And you're absolutely right. We're seeing more investment in EX as a way to, I think, engage the whole organization and every employee in everybody's jobs, but also as a way to improve the holistic experience. Improving that employee experience definitely has a benefit on the bottom line, and happier and more engaged employees are always going to give better service and give better customer experiences. And I think we all see that in our daily lives when we have good or bad face-to-face experiences with the brands that we work with. Employees that are more enabled are going to give you better experiences just by default. And so we are seeing more investment in it, but we're definitely seeing, I love this slide, we're definitely seeing this type of cycle occurring in organizations that heavily focus on EX. They do see these types of returns.
Yeah, Troy, and I'm glad you called out some of the research. So I've certainly been one that's been tracking that research. We kind of started on this journey probably close to 10 years ago. And at that point, it was a little thin, to try to find research. It was back then, hey, there's something there. There has to be something there. You began to then see stuff in the MIT CISR. If you've ever seen their work, have been focusing on employee experience for quite a while and the impacts to CX as well. But now you're starting to see, as Troy mentioned, the mainstream research of the Gartners and Forresters and those folks of the world really starting to talk about it from a similar story. So I think it's beginning to gel that this makes sense. So it's great to see. I'll say the marketplace start to understand that a little bit further. So I think also as we look at the digital workplace, what it's not is always. I kind of hit on this stuff earlier, but sometimes we've had stakeholders along the line say, hey, this. And I think common in a lot of enterprises, if you look to the right, it's a single project, right? This is a project to go do this. It's like, no, just like customer experience, employee experience, and the digital workplace and enhancing that, it's a journey that you're going to be on. And there isn't necessarily a target end to it. It's about gaining that efficiency and productivity and trying to continue to drive. And you'll look for other opportunities. And there'll be ebbs and flows as technology changes, as work cultures change, et cetera. But it's not a one and done thing. And sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do. And the other big thing is the notion of communities and work groups. I think that's one of the most challenging things if you look at it from a tooling perspective is how do you tool that and how do you support that? If you take me for an example, I'm a part of several different groups, and that's pretty typical. So I have a bunch of different communities, and how do I maintain that? All my experience in all those communities and trying to do that, and how different is it, et cetera. So I think that'll continue to be a challenge. Some of that we've talked about some of this, but what do we do if we do this well? Quick access to information, improving search and chasing that, personalized and customized. Troy mentioned earlier, really part of what we're trying to deal with all this stuff is I think we live in a culture of a lot of information overload. I think as you look at it from a generational standpoint, different groups deal with it better. But at the end of the day, it's a cognitive thing, and you can be better or worse at it. But if you can manage information overload, you're always going to be ahead. It's about collaborating with peers everywhere for us, really trying to use that experience globally. I need real-time access to information, and why that's a big deal is if you look at our past and how we communicated some things. We were a very international company for many years, and we've been transitioning to being a very global company. And by that, I mean, as an international company, we had operations in numerous countries, but we weren't very well integrated with them. And as we try to become more global, it's to be more consistent so that we can communicate consistent in real time there. There continue, and that's a big stretch for us. And just like Troy mentioned earlier, hey, this is all should be intuitive, similar to how we look at it in our personal lives. If an app is too confusing, then it's too confusing. We don't. That was a common thing I got from a lot of stakeholders too, as we looked at this from an intranet standpoint. So when are you going to do trading? And my answer was, I'm not. If it's not intuitive enough for your users to use, then we've missed, and we'll work on those pieces that we've missed. This isn't a go train people how to use an intranet. It should be intuitive. So one of the key steps I've kind of talked about a little bit is really, what a modern intranet is for us. And as we look at what our vision is, and it shouldn't be a surprise here, given the things I've talked about, it was really about building a unified and personalized platform, connecting us to the tools and information to each other, right? Trying to empower folks and try to share knowledge. So this is a core tenet from our cultural standpoint, some pillars that we've been working through and really trying to connect people, empowering users. And part of that empowerment is you got to give them the information to do what they need to do. We want to unite ourselves. I kind of talked a little bit about, shifting from an international to a global company, big focus for us. And then we're trying to align experiences back to that. We talked about CX and EX. That's a key piece there. A little bit about what's different from the past for us. I think there's a few things that have been, there were differentiators in what we were trying to do. I mentioned earlier the real-time commenting. We do, and we did sort of what I would call version 0.1 or 0.5 probably of trying to do some social things. So we do some simple things like likes and comments and obviously trying to generate conversations there. How that will then shift that into more open discussion abilities and things like that moving down the line. But that's been a key thing. Personalized experiences based on my BU, based on my location, based on my country that I'm part of. That whole personalization has been a key, and we were unsure to some extent how the culture would adapt to that. But they've adapted to that very quickly. And again, that's one of the more popular things we'll have to continue to evolve. Ability to customize that experience too. So not only do you need to allow targeting, but then you need me to allow me to customize that. And in some cases, I won't allow you to customize some things. So like back to the subscription stuff, if you're part of our pension business, what we call retirement business, I don't let you opt out of news for the retirement business. You're locked into that. Kind of a sorry, but that's where you work. But if you want to follow our life insurance business, go subscribe and you'll start getting news and information coming from them. Sort of the model that we started and will continue to evolve. Obviously, contemporary site structure. Mobile friendly is a huge thing. We continue to try to drive more to be mobile friendly. What we did for our out of the box mobile, and folks like Makuman allow this to is basically the responsive web experience, and we pretty much took what we got out of the box there, and we continue to get more engagement there. As you look at globally, so as we go different places in the globe, Santiago, for instance, mobile is a bigger thing, and their usage is heavier than it is here in the U.S. Same thing's true in Hong Kong. So just that's varied for us. Improve search, huge part for us is to try to improve search and trying to drive the culture from one that still believed the way to find things was understanding the content architecture instead of just searching for it. And then we also started a very early version of what we called work resources, and I talked about this earlier a little bit, but really trying to shift from content-oriented structures to user-oriented structures. In other words, if I need to travel, why can't I go click on one button on the internet and say, give me everything I need to know about travel and links to the applications, and then eventually we'd want to be able to tie in and just pull in data and pull in some of the things that one would want to do. And that's where, digital workplace experience or digital employee experience platforms will allow you to start to do those things. And that's certainly the goal, again, from a user standpoint, make it easy for you. That's kind of the core of what I had. So I'll turn it back over to Michael.
Thank you. And we are just getting this.
Oh, you just had it.
There we go. All right, Troy, you may begin.
Great, thanks, Mike. And Keith, thank you for taking us all through that journey. I think it's always great to understand what people are doing in this space, and certainly, we work in this space solely. That's all we do. We are an employee experience software company. So, what we see in the market is very similar to all the things that Keith was talking about. And so, just a little bit about us. Again, we are an employee experience software platform. We do provide these experiences for all of our customers that are looking to engage their employees. They are unique and different, but they all share common themes. And some of those themes, I really like kind of this slide here, just because it dovetails nicely with what Keith has been talking about today, and that is that employee experience hasn't kept pace with. Oh, sorry about that, folks. Hold on one second. I'm just going to have you page through the slides. Employee experience hasn't kept pace with the types of experiences that we all have in our personal lives. They're not as engaging as we'd like. They're disconnected. There's hurdles around things like collaboration. And again, all of them kind of dovetail nicely into things Keith was talking about. The ability for me to personalize the content that's being delivered to me is critical these days. I can do that everywhere else in my life, right? I can do that on my mobile devices. I can do that when I go to public-facing websites. I can do that when I'm booking travel. I can determine what I see. I should be able to have that at work as well. And frankly, the more that we have content being generated inside of the office, the more that we're going to need that. Technology systems being disconnected is a hurdle to people being more productive. That was certainly one of the things Keith mentioned on one of his slides was, that their users were talking about tools needing to be integrated. We see that, I'd say, across every project that we work on now is bringing together data that's not your traditional kind of intranet data, right? People think of news and policies and knowledge-based articles and information like that as being the sole domain of the intranet and what people need to get their jobs done, when in reality, there's a ton of other silos of data out there. I've got support tickets sitting in a support system. I may have an expense that I need to approve, or a procurement request that comes through, depending on what my job is. Those all sit in kind of traditionally in different systems. Finding a way to bring those alerts, those notifications, that information into the digital workplace is something our customers are looking to do, and frankly, why we built the platform that we have. And then certainly people needing to collaborate across business units with each other, across partners. I belong to a lot of different collaboration tools that are with our external partners and our external customers, and that's very helpful to me to get my job done. But how do we incorporate that into an overall digital workplace solution and effort? These are all the things, if you want to think of it, this is the thesis that Acumen started our business on. Was we saw these challenges evolving. We've seen them over the decade that Keith has been talking about. And so we chose to build a solution that could help people start solving these things. And it's not about a plug-and-play product that just naturally solves all these things. We don't believe in that. We believe in a platform that allows you to address these things. And so, Mike, if you want to go to the next slide. Really, that's where our software comes in. And it's really about making those challenges easier to solve. So not, again, some out-of-the-box thing that magically solves all of the challenges we've talked about today, both in Keith's presentation and in that last slide. But it's about building a solution that allows these things to be delivered more easily. So make them easier to implement. People don't want to spend the 12 to 18 or even longer, month projects on delivering these intranet solutions anymore, these employee portal solutions, as I like to think of them. They want to be able to get them done more quickly. And I think one of the slides Keith had mentioned, it's not one project. It's more like a product that you need to build for your organization that has these goals in mind that you deliver over time, because things are going to change, both in terms of who your audiences are, what tools they use, and those types of things. So it's got to be easy to put in place. It's got to be easy to operate. If people can't create content easily or create new experiences easily, they're not going to do it. It's just, we've seen that over time. So it has to be easy to operate, and it has to be easy for the organization to manage. If you want to take advantage of new technologies, build in new capabilities, you don't know what's coming down the road from a tech perspective 6 to 12 months from now that you may want to incorporate into these experiences. We focused on making our platform easy to manage so that you can add those things in over time as you need to. And, we don't think of it as just one experience either. I do hardly agree with Keith in that it shouldn't be and can't be 50 different experiences that we're putting in front of people. I think that's a challenge that we see today, again, with all those other systems that people have at play. But it isn't just an intranet. That's a big part of it. It is about maybe communications and communicating to specific audiences inside of your organizations. We all have different audiences inside of our organizations that need these experiences. It is about delivering the ability for people to collaborate with the chosen tools that they use. And I say tools because I don't think we have a single customer that uses one collaboration tool. There's multiples out there that people use, and they got to incorporate those together in a meaningful way for people. It is about building integrations where it makes sense and how it makes sense to get people information beyond, again, just kind of that traditional intranet content you might think of. It is about delivering content where people are. So native mobility is huge, right? I travel a lot. I'm on the road a lot. A lot of our customers have workers that, frankly, all they do is travel. I'll actually talk about a case study here of a purely mobile audience that we're addressing. And then we think, and I think it's been proven out, you need to have a great management system behind all of it so that you can build these solutions more effectively and, more importantly, maintain them more effectively by those distributed audiences. We've got customers that have, in some cases, thousands of content authors because they are broadly getting information from everybody in their organization. You need a strong content management system that's easy to use. You don't have to spend a ton of time training people so that you can broaden that audience or that collective of content authors. One of the things I wanted to do was just look at one case study really quickly because I think it's important. Keith spent quite a bit of time talking about their journey in building their new intranet. If we go look at this case study here, sorry, this slide was taking a second. It really isn't about an intranet. It's about providing a purpose-built portal for one audience. Now, certainly Sleep Number has an intranet that they provide to all of their employees, but they've built a part of that portal that's specifically for their store employees and specifically designed to be used on tablets in the stores. And the reason that they did that is they knew they had one audience that they needed to address solely. And so, I think to Keith's point about if you're in one part of their business, they're going to naturally deliver you content that you can't opt out to. That's what happens here for Sleep Number. In their stores, when a store worker pulls up the portal on that tablet, they're seeing the seller portal that's got information about products, whether it's product specs or promotions or inventory, things like that they need in that time to work with their customers, right? And so they can go and look at the intranet, maybe on a device in the back or, on their mobile device if they need to get to standard information. But in that moment, they need information about those products and about really that customer interaction that they're trying to foster. And so they've built, using our platform, this experience. And again, we've got dozens of different experiences that we can talk about and as a follow-up, schedule time with any of you folks that look at intranet as well as these other types of experiences. And so I thought it was important to highlight something like that. Again, we can talk more about other use cases. And I think if we go to the last slide here, one of the things, again, because we're a software platform, one of the things we're delivering is the tools to bring all this stuff together. So again, that integration nature of what we are seeing in the marketplace is something that our platform fosters greatly because it allows you to deliver content from the right systems into the right experiences for your employees. So whether it's a fully mobile-based experience, whether it is an intranet experience, maybe it's a digital dashboard that's giving me all the information I need from multiple different systems to get my job done. That's what our platform's designed to do, is allow you to go in and build the right experiences. Again, it could be a global audience. It could be an audience that's in a very specific user type. It could be a mobile-only experience that you're building. The flexibility of our software allows you to do that, and it gives you a very strong management experience as well, so that you can maintain those solutions. So again, not going to do a full deep dive into the product or anything like that today. We wanted to spend some time really having Keith highlight what Principal has done, and what they were focused on, and trends that they're seeing that we certainly see in the market as well. And then talk a little bit about, our platform as a means to deliver those types of experiences. Would love to spend some time answering questions now, and then certainly we can follow up with one-on-one meetings with anybody who's interested as well.
And for those of you, and this is Mike Scott, the moderator, so any of you guys who are interested, while I compile some of these questions that you guys have submitted, I'm going to launch a quick poll. Let us know if you are interested in hearing from us and getting a little more information. For those of you who are still trying to submit questions, you can do so by selecting the questions drop down in the GoToWebinar panel. Just make sure you're submitting it to all panelists. So I'm going to keep that poll up for, there we go. I'm going to keep it up just for a minute while we compile these questions, and then we'll get to the Q&A in about 30 seconds. All right, let's get back to the Q&A. There we go. All right, so our first question from Jackson in the audience. He was like, so this seems to be for you, Keith, and Troy, feel free to jump in, but Keith, for you first, what systems do you have integrated into your digital workplace? And if you aren't allowed to say that, they do have a follow-up question, is how many of you actually connected within your digital workplace platform?
Yeah, so to be honest, today we're not connecting in a lot of things today. Today we built this from a content management standpoint, built on top of Office 365, and we're really trying to pull some stuff there to get today. We haven't gotten to the maturity yet where we're pulling in data from a lot of other places, and that's really we spent most of 2019 trying to reach our global audience. Different challenges from anywhere from an infrastructure perspective to people and culture. As we shift to 2020, we'll be looking to probably start to leverage much more of the connectivity components of what Akumina is doing. So we haven't done much there. We're fairly immature. I think the possibilities are endless. It's back to looking at different high value places, doing journey mapping and figuring out how to improve some of those journeys. And one of the best ways I've ever heard anybody describe how to look at it is actually from someone at MIT Sisser who talks about, hey, just start looking at where some of the big speed bumps are in your employees' workday and go solve some of those speed bumps. And then you look for the next speed bumps. And so that's what I hope to really set after in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I would just echo that we see that a lot too. I think what Principal's focused on is building a strong foundation, which you need to have in place. If you think about the building a house analogy, you can't build a great house if you don't have a great foundation. And so we see our customers go on those journeys where they're building that foundation. They're focusing on kind of those speed bumps, I think is a good analogy there. And then start tackling those and start building in, whether it's integrations or maybe it's building in another experience for a core set of employees, like I highlighted in the case study, whatever it happens to be. Again, that was, I think, the point about it. It's not one project, right? It's you need to build on top of it. And that's one of the things we see from all of our customers is they treat it much more like a journey. They don't treat it like it's got some endpoint that you get to and you're done. It really is about building on top of that good foundation and then saying, okay, what can I integrate in? What can I bring in for other experiences that are going to enrich this for our employees?
Awesome. Thank you, Troy, and thank you, Keith. So the next question is from Shelly in the audience. She wants to know, how does the digital group work with the CX group at Principal, or does your organization, Keith, think of it all as CX or UX?
No, so we certainly bridge. Again, like I mentioned, I think the discipline is the same. I think, so one of our core business goals right now is to continue to drive to be more customer centric, typical for a lot of large companies. So I think if working together from a discipline standpoint is key, but then at the end of the day, you end up prioritizing the next and executing differently. And I think that's partly because if you said, I'm a customer first company, everything that I want to do for customers, if I have limited resources, I'm going to prioritize customer first stuff first, and I'll do absolutely nothing about EX. And I talked about that a little bit earlier. That's still a challenge for us, but I think we have to build more of the same discipline capabilities in our EX space. And we're still early in that. So I would say you want to be practicing some of the same disciplines without a doubt. And then coming together in terms of also understanding what some of the end results are and what some of you'll optimize differently. But
great, thank you, Keith. The next question from the audience is from Raul. He wants to know, where's this question? There we go. So Keith, you had mentioned that you have external contractors, partners, working on multiple projects with different internal employees. How are you able to ensure that they're not able to access? Basically, the question is around how are you able to ensure proper governance within your solution?
Yeah, so I think that comes back to one of the key things that Troy had on the wheel that Akumina shows, and that's around the content management. So today, most of that 98% of the content that we have right now available is within SharePoint Online. So like anything within SharePoint, you can build whatever sort of security model you want, while your goal is to, from a knowledge management perspective, to share as openly as possible. We certainly have the ability to lock things down. We have joint ventures where we might be the majority owner. In some cases, they can't necessarily see things. As we look towards the partners and getting more of them on, which we haven't done a lot of yet, we'll limit that either. So our hope is to stay pretty coarse in terms of how we look at that from a content security standpoint. But the tooling will let you get as granular as you want. I think it just adds to management over time. Is the thing that I try to balance against.
Great, thank you, Keith. And then we have one more question, and this is for Troy. So they want to know what canvases is Akumina available on, meaning SharePoint, Modern versus Classic, or any other canvases?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, we, again, as a flexible platform, we really are, we are a tool that's helping people deliver the right experiences. And so we're making it available as broadly as possible. So for example, you can use it in all flavors of SharePoint. We are built on the Microsoft stack. So, that's a canvas, if you want to think of it that way, or a presentation layer that you can build on top of. You can build in something like Azure if you wanted to have, a flexible delivery model there. Native mobile apps is something that you can deliver the experiences within. Even things like, say, building inside of a tool like Microsoft Teams, if that's something your organization uses, is a viable way to deliver some of these experiences. It's about choosing, like anything, the right delivery mechanism or tool for the job, and what's the purpose of what you're building, and what is the best place to deliver that, or places if you need to deliver it in multiple areas.
Great, thank you. We actually have one more question, and so Keith, this is for you, and this will be our final question of the day. Saram from our audience wants to know what was the length of the implementation of your Akumina's system, and then what were some change management issues you might have had, or what was your perspective on that? How quickly, meaning, I think what they're asking is how quickly were people able to adopt the new solution?
Yeah, all great questions. So I'll kind of break it apart. And my timeline one is I'll be a bit wishy-washy on, simply because we were coming off a 20 plus year old intranet that the content was not managed well. So we engaged a system integrator who helped us for quite a while. And so we were actually starting to do some of the Akumina work, and then really sort of paused that and said, okay, what we really need to do is to go do a bunch of cleanup. And so then we spent 9 months getting rid of about 70 to 80% of the old content from our old intranet, and said, yeah, that's just going by. We're not moving that over. And then we figured out how we move over and implemented the Akumina framework. et cetera. And that part actually was pretty quick. We probably spent, from a design to roll out, spent around 6 months doing that. I think that's probably longer than the typical. Troy and Michael could certainly probably communicate on the typical. But our typical was a little bit longer, partly because we were doing content cleanup, which had nothing to do with tooling, had everything to do with people and culture and managing the content a lot better, and tagging it. I think from, challenges and change management, the number one change management thing for us, and you would think it should be simple, but because it's how we work in our personal lives, but our response was, have you tried search? Again, we shifted from an environment where search wasn't very good to an environment where search is pretty good. We're just using the Microsoft search capabilities. We do have some other tooling, but we're just using the Microsoft tooling right now. Works pretty well. It does come down to some curation. So they have a concept of best bets, and we certainly utilize that. Back to my travel policy example, you search for the travel policy, you'll get the travel policy. Mostly, we're still trying to globalize some things where in some countries it's slightly different, and we need to retro a bunch of our policy stuff into being a little more back to the personalization side. It's not personalized, but certainly just trying to drive people intuitive. I think people figured it out pretty quickly. They've really adopted. We have notions of my bookmarks, my applications. That was pretty intuitive. They grab onto that, they save it. They understand feeds. We really tried to pump a lot of the news into a notion of my feed where it's subscriptions. Most people, are using news feeds in some way, shape, or form in their personal lives. So they adopted that pretty quickly too. So from that standpoint, changing with the users, it's really been about getting them on a modern browser in some cases. That's a challenge because they like to use IE. And then probably the other thing is, hey, search is your friend, just like it is in your personal life. I think I hit most of the facets there. If there was another one that I missed there, Michael, tell me.
No, I think you got it all. Thank you so much, Keith, for that. And I want to thank both, again, Keith and Troy, our two presenters, for their presentation today. And, of course, everyone who stayed on the line and stuck with us for an hour. We appreciate it. If you had any connection issues or missed any part of the webinar, no worries. We did record this session, so it will be sent out to you within 24 to 48 hours. And if you're looking for more great content like today's presentation, check out our resources section on acumanet.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.